What really happened to Ozzy Osbourne in his final days? The Prince of Darkness, the untamed spirit who roared into heavy metal history, faced a battle that even his legendary grit couldn't defeat. Recent revelations from his personal doctor have torn open a saga of relentless pain, haunting regrets, and a defiant fight to leave a mark on the world. By July 2025, the man who once shocked the globe by biting the head off a bat could barely hold a spoon, trapped in a body crumbling under decades of chaos. Let's unravel the raw, untold truth of Ozzy's final months, the illnesses that broke him, the scars of a wild past, and the heartbreaking choices that defined his end. Ozzy Osbourne wasn't just a rock star. He was a hurricane in human conveniently form, shaking the world with Black Sabbath's thunderous riffs. Songs like Paranoid, Iron Man, and War Pigs didn't just define heavy metal. They rewrote what music could be, raw and unapologetic. But by his final years, that hurricane was fading into a whisper. In 2003, doctors diagnosed him with PRKN2, a rare genetic form of Parkinson's disease, a secret he guarded until 2020. When he finally opened up on Good Morning America, his voice cracked as he admitted, "I can't walk properly anymore. My legs feel like they're not mine." By 2025, at 76, the disease had stolen more than his stride. It took his freedom. Tremors shook his hands like a cruel metronome, making simple tasks like eating or dressing a daily ordeal. Muscle rigidity locked his body, turning every move into a fight. Sharon, his wife and unwavering anchor, described mornings when he'd sit in silence staring at the wall, trapped in a body that refused to obey. Medications like levodopa and physical therapy offered glimmers of relief, but they were fleeting. Good days were rare, bad days were a slow torture. In a 2022 interview with The Times, Ozzy confessed, "Some days I feel like I'm drowning in my own skin." Fans who'd seen him leap across stages couldn't fathom this new reality, a rock icon caged by his own nerves. But Parkinson's was only the beginning of the storm tearing through him. The real agony came from his spine, a war zone scarred by years of reckless abandon. Ozzy's stage presence was electric, leaping into crowds, headbanging through marathon sets. But it came at a brutal price. In 2003, an ATV accident in England shattered his neck and collarbone, forcing doctors to implant metal rods to hold his spine together. "I thought I was invincible," he later told Rolling Stone, laughing bitterly. Then in 2019, a fall at his Los Angeles home turned his life into a living nightmare. The crash dislodged those rods, twisting his spine and sparking a chain of surgeries that never fully mended him. His personal doctor recently revealed a chilling detail. For 3 months in early 2025, part of Ozzy's spine was starved of spinal fluid, trapped by a mysterious blockage. "It was diabolical agony," Ozzy told Sharon, his voice breaking as he described pain like knives twisting in his back, radiating through every nerve. One surgery uncovered a tumor in his vertebrae, a cruel twist that made walking nearly impossible. Painkillers dulled the edges, but never enough. Vicodin and nerve blocks were like tossing pebbles at a tsunami. Physical therapy sessions were grueling, each stretch a reminder of what he'd lost. By spring 2025, he relied on a wheelchair, his balance shattered, his steps like wading through quicksand. Fans who caught glimpses of him in public, frail and supported by aides, shared heartbroken posts on X, one writing, "Seeing Ozzy like that broke me. He's still the prince, but DMN, life's cruel." Another ghost from his past was about to make that cruelty even sharper. Ozzy's rock star life was a double-edged sword, and the blade cut deep. The 1970s and 80s were a whirlwind of drugs, booze, and chaos. Cocaine-fueled nights, whiskey-soaked days, and choices that became legends of their own. The 1982 bat-biting incident in Des Moines, where Ozzy chomped a supposedly dead bat on stage, wasn't just a stunt. It was a snapshot of a life spiraling wild. He laughed it off later, but the drugs and alcohol were no joke. "I was out of my mind half the time," he told Metal Hammer in 2020, reflecting on tours where he'd down bottles of Jack Daniels and snort lines before shows. He got sober in the late 1980s, and by May 2025, he proudly told The Guardian he was a sober homebody, trading chaos for quiet nights with Sharon and their dogs. But the damage was etched into his body. His doctor confirmed that decades of substance abuse had ravaged his liver, kidneys, and heart. Arrhythmia plagued his cardiovascular system, requiring daily meds to keep his heart from racing out of control. His kidneys struggled to filter toxins, and his liver was a patchwork of scars, barely holding on. The toll wasn't just physical, addiction had carved deep wounds into his mind. Depression and anxiety shadowed him, fueled by guilt over the pain he'd caused his family. In his 2009 memoir, I Am Ozzy, he wrote, "I spent years running from myself, and now I'm paying the price." His immune system, weakened by abuse, left him vulnerable to Parkinson's and spinal issues. On X, fans debated his past, one posting, "Ozzy lived harder than most, but it's heartbreaking how it caught up." The wild nights that made him a legend were now a chain dragging him down, but his spirit was about to shine through the darkness. Even as his body betrayed him, Ozzy's heart refused to break. On July 5, 2025, he pulled off a miracle, a final Black Sabbath show in Birmingham, England, called Back to the Beginning. Too weak to stand, he performed from a bat-themed throne, his voice still a raw, primal force on classics like Crazy Train, No More Tears, and War Pigs. The setlist was a love letter to fans, closing with Children of the Grave, as 40,000 voices sang along, joined by millions streaming online. The concert raised $190 million for charities, including the Cure Parkinson's Trust, a cause Ozzy championed as Parkinson's tightened its grip. "I've been laid up for 6 King years," he told the crowd, his voice cracking with emotion. "You have no idea what this means. Thank you from the bottom of my DMN heart." Celebrities like Jason Momoa, Dave Grohl, and Metallica's James Hetfield were in the audience, cheering for a man who'd shaped their own paths. Sharon called it his full stop, a farewell to the fans who'd carried him through decades of highs and lows. On X, a fan posted, "Ozzy on that throne was like a king refusing to fall. I cried through the whole show." Another shared a clip of him waving, captioned, "This is how a legend says goodbye." But behind the stage lights, the pain was relentless, a shadow he couldn't outrun. His triumph was a spark in the dark, but the darkness was closing in. That darkness wasn't just physical, it was a mental and emotional void. Parkinson's and chronic pain didn't just steal his mobility, they robbed him of the music that defined him. Unable to perform, meet fans, or even jam with friends, Ozzy felt cut off from the world. "Music was my soul," he told Sharon, "and now it's like I'm locked out of my own life." Depression sank in, heavy and unyielding, worsened by the isolation of his illness. Anxiety flared as he faced a future he couldn't control. Therapy sessions with a psychologist gave him a space to vent, but the sadness was a tide that kept rising. Sharon was his rock, staying by his side through every low, organizing his care, and keeping his spirits up with her fierce love. His kids, Amy, Kelly, Jack, and Lewis from his first marriage, were his lifeline, their visits a reminder of what he was fighting for. Kelly shared on Instagram stories in June 2025, "Dad's fighting and we're fighting with him. He's still our crazy, beautiful dad." Their love kept him grounded, but the weight of his losses was crushing. On X, a fan wrote, "Ozzy's family is everything. Sharon's his warrior, and those kids are his heart." But then whispers of something darker started to spread, raising questions that lingered like smoke. Online, fans began speculating about Ozzy's final days. Posts on X floated rumors that his unbearable pain might have led to an assisted end, especially after his triumphant Birmingham show. Some claimed he'd chosen to go out on his own terms, a way to escape the agony that defined his last months. These are unverified rumors, just chatter from the internet's corners, and we're not saying they're true. What we do know is that on July 11, 2025, Kelly Osbourne took to social media to shut down similar talk. "People saying Dad's King dying need to stop," she posted, her words sharp with anger. "He's got Parkinson's, his legs don't work like they used to, but he's still here, still fighting." Her fierce defense showed the family's resolve, but the speculation lingered, fueled by Ozzy's visible decline. On X, one user wrote, "If Ozzy chose his exit, who are we to judge? Man lived through hell." Another countered, "Kelly's right, stop the rumors, let him rest in peace." The truth remains veiled, but Ozzy's courage in facing a failing body was undeniable. As his final days neared, he turned inward, confronting the life he'd lived and the mistakes he couldn't erase. In those last months, Ozzy's doctor shared that he began a raw, soul-bearing reflection. He'd changed music forever. Black Sabbath's dark, heavy sound birthed heavy metal, and his solo career, with hits like "Mama, I'm Coming Home" and "No More Tears," kept him a titan. Ozfest, the festival he co-founded with Sharon, launched bands like Slipknot and System of a Down, cementing his influence. But the regrets piled high. He told his doctor he wished he'd dodged the drugs, the nights that blurred into years, the pain he caused Sharon and his kids. "I've f***ed up a lot," he admitted in a quiet moment, his voice heavy with guilt. In his 2009 memoir, he wrote about cheating on Sharon and neglecting his family, choices that haunted him. Yet, in those final moments, he found peace. Sharon's forgiveness was his salvation. She'd stood by him through addiction, scandals, and now illness, her love unwavering. His kids' presence, their laughter and tears wrapped him in warmth. His doctor revealed a gut-wrenching choice. Ozzy stopped treatment, not out of defeat, but to face the end with dignity. More surgeries or meds would only prolong the pain, and he was done fighting a losing battle. On July 22, 2025, surrounded by Sharon, his kids, and the love he'd earned, Ozzy slipped away, at peace with a life of chaos and redemption. Ozzy Osbourne's story isn't just a rock star's legend, it's a raw human tale of glory and grit. He pioneered heavy metal, bared his chaotic life on the Osbournes,